I believe so.
Okay.
Did we? I don't know.
Give him a little
Hello?
test.
Testing?
Okay.
You want to be close to it.
Okay. How's that?
Perfect.
Is that better? Okay. There?
Yeah, and
Okay, okay, good.
Max told me to get closer to mine because he has it set for the chairman. He was really loud. So, I think we're all set. See, we'll figure this all out. Okay, we'll resume hearing in 509. Mr. Edwards, you want to call your second witness?
Yes.
Swear in.
Thank you. I'd like to call Georgia Power Company's next witness in this docket, Mr. Glenn Dyke. And Mr. Dyke, would you raise your right hand? And do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
And will you please state for the record your full name, your employer, and your responsibilities?
My name is Glenn William Dyke, and I am the Customer Pricing Manager for Georgia Power.
Thank you. Mr. Dyke, on August 16th of this year, did you pre-file or cause to be pre-filed 29 pages of direct testimony in question and answer format and 6 exhibits?
Yes.
And on August 26th, did you pre-file or cause to be pre-filed 29 pages of rebuttal testimony in question and answer format and 1 exhibit?
Yes.
I would like those exhibits to be identified as Georgia Power 3 through 10. And I realize that there is a separate exhibit list with numbers, but they don't follow that numbering, so I thought it would be best just to do it the old-fashioned way for the court report and the transcript.
Right. That's it, very well.
Okay, okay. And did you, on September 3rd, cause to be filed an errata to your direct and rebuttal testimonies?
Yes.
And are there any other corrections you need to make to your direct or rebuttal testimony or exhibits?
No.
If I were to ask you the same questions today under oath, would your answers be the same as set forth in the pre-filed testimony as corrected?
Yes.
And I'd like to tender exhibits, Georgia Power exhibits 3 through 10 into the record subject to cross-examination and the pending motions.
Yes, thank you. So
And the court reporter has previously been given a copy of the pre-trial filed direct testimony and rebuttal testimony. I ask that those testimonies, Mr. Dyke, be copied into the record as though given today.
Yes.
And Mr. Dyke,
Subject to pending objection.
Yes, I'm sorry.
subject to pending objections. And Mr. Dyke, have you prepared a summary of your testimony?
Yes, I have.
Please proceed with your summary.
Good afternoon. In my position as Georgia Power's Customer Pricing Manager, I have responsibility for the company's compliance with the Georgia Territorial Electric Service Act. I also lead the pricing application team, which writes the language for the company's tariffs and rules and regulations and assures their correct application. In my pre-filed testimony, I show that Georgia Power began serving the current Nestle Purina facility back when it was built by Dundee Mills in 1991. Although the facility is located in Georgia Power's service territory, Dundee Mills chose Georgia Power to serve the premises by way of customer choice. Much of my direct and rebuttal testimony reflects my participation in a July 29, 2019 physical inspection of the premises that has been continually served by Georgia Power through 3 owners, Dundee Mills, Springs Industries, and Nestle Purina. My testimony exhibits show that when Dundee Mills built the facility in 1991, it consisted of a 190,000 square foot warehouse and a 137,000 square foot manufacturing facility used to manufacture consumer goods, specifically towels. Georgia Power served the premises via an overhead 12 kV line to a 2500 kVA transformer. We continue to serve Nestle Purina's permanent operations from that same line and transformer today. The blueprint over here on the left, which is also in my testimony, is from 1990, and it shows how Dundee Mills used each area of the building. My testimony and exhibits show that Nestle Purina is currently using the area Dundee Mills built as a warehouse for Nestle Purina's distribution warehouse operations. The area Dundee Mills built as office space is being used to house Nestle Purina offices, and the area Dundee Mills built for manufacturing is being used by Nestle Purina for manufacturing. These operations include a distribution warehouse that commenced permanent operations more than a year ago, using the exact same space marked as warehouse on the 1990 blueprint. During our July 2019 site inspection, Nestle Purina's representative explained to me that the products stored in the warehouse represented just 3 weeks' worth of inventory and that the warehouse was filled to capacity. During that site visit, I also observed an operational data center, offices, and maintenance shop, in addition to startup testing for their production lines, all energized by Georgia Power through the line installed to serve permanent operations almost 30 years ago. The largest expansion to the premises was made by Springs Industries when they added a weaving facility in 1999 that doubled the manufacturing space to 313,000 square feet. That space, which Springs Industries used for manufacturing, is now being used by Nestle Purina for manufacturing. After expanding the manufacturing space, Springs Industries built a separate compressor building. This expansion was included within Georgia Power's service to the premises. The compressor building, used by Springs Industries to house compressors for manufacturing operations, is now housing Nestle Purina's compressors. After Nestle Purina acquired the premises in 2017, they continued to take service from Georgia Power, again through the same line installed to serve Dundee Mills. Nestle Purina has constructed some expansions on the premises. Photo 3 in my direct testimony was taken on July 26, 2019, and shows a freezer expansion and an empty can storage expansion. My testimony shows that neither of these expansions destroy the original functionality of the building, and that all these expansions to the building are served by Georgia Power. For example, the freezer addition was chilled when our site inspection was conducted. The photograph also shows the busy truck loading and unloading area in use for the distribution warehouse. The original premises remains in use. This continuity can be seen from aerial photographs such as the ones on this poster, and there on the right, and there's two different photos on that. The photo on the left is an aerial view taken just before Nestle Purina's purchase of the premises in 2017. The photo on the right shows the premises this past February. As you can clearly see, while Nestle Purina has made some additions, the original premises that Dundee Mills and Springs Industries built remains intact and in use. One small change you can see is where Nestle Purina replaced the roofing membrane over 4% of the roof. During our site visit, we were able to see that the concrete roof structure under that membrane that was changed, the concrete structure did not change. In my testimony, I addressed Nestle Purina's characterizations of the premises as essentially abandoned and dilapidated. The premises was neither abandoned nor dilapidated, as evidenced by the appraisal document provided by Nestle Purina. The photographs from the 2016 appraisal report, which Mr. Sandhu excluded when he included the report in his exhibits, but are included in my rebuttal testimony, show the integrity of the walls, floors, and ceilings throughout. The report shows that the 190,000 square foot distribution warehouse was leased to reputable tenants needing warehouse space, exactly as Nestle Purina uses it today. Nestle Purina's testimony includes photographs of areas that show dirt floors, without clearly disclosing that these areas were temporarily exposed as part of Nestle Purina's installation of plumbing, not disrepair. My rebuttal testimony explains that Nestle Purina only replaced 15% of the existing floor in order to install drains, replacing the flooring with similar floors with the drains added. Indeed, the appraisal photographs Mr. Sandhu omits show the floors and walls much as I saw them on July 29, 2019. Nestle Purina has been able to implement substantially similar operations in much of the building within the same substantial walls that were the original exterior of the building, and under substantially the same roof with no major changes to the footprint defining warehouse, manufacturing, and office functions. A small amount of manufacturing space was converted to offices within the original floor plate. Nestle Purina continues to use the support infrastructure in its present operations, such as offices, the air compressor building, and the maintenance shop, which I included a picture of in my testimony. Where it has replaced aging equipment, such as boilers, the old boilers were replaced with new boilers located nearby. Likewise, it has replaced older electrical equipment, but this was for the purpose of continuing the manufacturing and warehousing functionality of the original and expanded plant in the same functional areas. In conclusion, Georgia Power Company lawfully extended service to the premises in 1991. We have continually provided permanent retail electric service to the premises for almost 30 years and continue to do so today. While Nestle Purina is expanding their facility, as thankfully many of our customers do, the original premises remains fully intact and has been used for Nestle Purina's permanent operations for more than a year. The availability of Georgia Power Company's service has enabled Nestle Purina to acquire a valuable facility, make a seamless transition to extensive operations, and expand those operations with retail electric service lawfully provided by Georgia Power.
Mr. Dyke is available for cross-examination.
Good afternoon, Mr. Dyke.
Good afternoon.
I'm David Cook. Again, I represent Walton EMC. In your testimony, you make a number of statements about the physical characteristics of this building and changes to the premises. Okay. Do you have any, are you a professional engineer?
No.
Okay.
No, I was doing those for my observations.
Okay. Did you have any engineering education?
No.
Okay. No structural license, structural engineering license?
No, again, I was doing those for my observations.
Sure. So I could go through the list of different categories of engineering subsets, and you would not have any education in those areas.
Not in engineering.
Okay. Did you have any previous experience in food manufacturing?
No.
Okay. So I should have said pet food manufacturing specifically.
Neither one.
Neither one. Have you? And you've never worked in a plant or worked for a company that manufactures or processes pet food?
No.
Okay. You've not had any legal education?
No.
Okay.
No.
Your experience with Georgia Power primarily has been with setting rates and pricing. Is that a fair statement?
I've got a lot of different experiences with Georgia Power. I've worked with Georgia Power for 25 years. I've been in the rates department for 15 years, which includes the territorial function, and then I've been responsible for territorial affairs for 3 years.
Okay. So your territorial affairs work started in October 2016.
Yes.
Okay.
Excuse me,
Yes.
what is territorial affairs mean?
It's basically responsibility for administering the Territorial Act within Georgia Power, so that if people within the company have a question about whether or not a facility should be customer choice or not, then I answer that question. I also administer three-party agreements and different things. Whatever things come up with territorial issues, then I do that, with the help of our attorneys, obviously. So.
And before that, you were just in rates and pricing for customer choice, loads?
I've been in, so territorial affairs is actually within the pricing and rates department. I've been in the pricing and rates department for 15 years, but I've been working with I've been the territorial affairs, have had responsibility for territorial affairs for 3 years.
Have you ever given testimony before the PSC about the Territorial Act?
No.
Had you given any opinion before about whether or not a facility was dismantled?
Yes, I do that frequently within our company, yes. Again, I'm the person that people go to, and again, I also work with our attorneys to make that determination.
Gotcha. But no PSC or court or deposition testimony about whether or not a premises had been dismantled
No,
or destroyed or reconstructed in substantial kind?
no.
I want to just talk specifically about your the factual basis for your statements in this case. And before July 29, 2019, which is when we had that site visit, right?
Right. Mhm.
Before that date, had you ever been to the premises?
I've been outside of it, but not inside.
Okay, outside from the road?
Yes,
from the road?
yes, yeah.
Okay. When was that?
Earlier this year, I don't know exactly when.
Not while Springs was in operation.
No, no.
Springs, of course, is the prior entity that owned this.
The prior owner, yes, yes.
So, other than so you viewed the premises on these two instances. Did you understand that you've reviewed some documents contained in Georgia Power's files?
I reviewed documents, I reviewed the photographs, including the ones that Nestle Purina provided that go back to 2017 before they purchased it. I reviewed the appraisal report that was from 2016. I've discussed it with Mr. Lawson and other people within Georgia Power that did work with the facility going back to all the way back to when Dundee Mills built the facility. We still have people around that were working with the plant at that time. So it might be most of the things most of the things I've reviewed.
Gotcha. Again, you've never viewed inside the premises while it was in operation as a textile manufacturing plant?
No.
Okay. And are you aware of any of the construction that has been performed after the site visit on July 29, 2019?
No, I haven't seen any pictures or anything like that.
At some point, I think in April of 2019, did you become aware that Nestle Purina reported to Georgia Power that it had made a choice to select Walton EMC?
Yes, I actually heard it first from Walton EMC in a conversation I had with them a couple weeks before that, or maybe a week before that. Yes.
Okay. Before that conversation, had you had any involvement with Purina, either in selecting the rate, switching over the account from Springs, or any other involvement in setting up electric service?
Well, what do you say involvement? Yes, I had involvement with the account, but you're talking about different things. So
Sure.
do you have specific
let's break it
involvements that yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Were you involved in switching the account over from Springs to Nestle Purina?
No.
Okay. Were you involved in the initial setup of Purina on the power and light rate?
No, that's done in our CSS system.
Do you have anything to do with John discussing and negotiating the renewable aspect?
No, I've spoken to the people that did, but no, I was not involved in it at the time.
Did you review Purina's load information? Let me back up. At some point, there was a discussion about switching from the original rate, which was the power and light rate, to a different rate.
Actually, that discussion first happened in 2017. One of the very first conversations had to do with Nestle Purina expressing some interest in moving to RTP and moving to the MLM rate, our multiple load management rate. Nestle Purina has a facility also in Fairburn, and the MLM rate is a rate that for customers that have locations in more than one account on Georgia Power, they can take advantage of that, and that would have actually lowered the pricing for the Fairburn plant at the same time. So again, that was something that was first discussed in 2017.
That wasn't discussed with you. It was you just heard about it.
Yes, that's correct.
But until the time that you were notified that Walton was purportedly selected by Purina, you really didn't have any involvement with this Nestle Purina.
No, I did. And as a matter of fact, in 2017, I was asked whether or not this was a customer choice, that whether or not Nestle Purina had a choice through customer choice. And I told people within Georgia Power that no, they did not. And that was, again, after consulting with our attorney.
Sure. Is that by email?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. And that has been, is that an exhibit here today?
No.
Okay.
So that was my first involvement with the Nestle Purina account.
Okay. You've looked through the documents produced by Georgia Power in this case, right?
Yes.
And is it true that you don't show up on any correspondence or document until Purina notified Georgia Power that it was selecting Walton EMC?
That's, I believe that's correct. I couldn't tell you for sure, but probably correct.
And
That's not
that-
to say there weren't other emails, but yeah, they didn't show up on the ones before that.
Okay. And that occurred in April 2019?
Subject to check.
Yeah, we'll check.
Yeah.
Okay. So some of your statements in your direct testimony and rebuttal testimony are about the condition of the building and whether or not it has been changed. Is that a fair statement?
No, I wouldn't say whether or not it's been changed. I would say that whether or not I was specifically addressing question or the characterization that Nestle Purina people said that it was abandoned, essentially abandoned and dilapidated. So that's what I was specifically going for. And then I also mentioned some things about external walls that were intact and such.
Right. You don't opine anything about whether or not the premises was destroyed or dismantled?
I think in my direct testimony, I'd have to check, but I can't remember if I said that or not. But so maybe you have something you want to read or.
No. Okay. Let's see. Yeah. Do you have your direct testimony? in front
Yes,
of
I
you?
do.
If you would turn to page 3, we also have. No, I don't have a copy of that for the hearing officer. You have it. Okay. Page 3, top of page 3, which continues over from page 2. You're answering the question, what is the purpose of your testimony? And you start with, my testimony provides factual basis for Georgia Public Service Commission to confirm. And then it goes on. And then the top of page 3, tell me if that refreshes your memory.
Yeah, I've got it right here.
Okay. And so you do offer some opinion
Yes.
about whether or not the
Yeah, I talked about the fact that the testimony demonstrates the continuity of the premises, yes.
Okay. So when you're referring to the premises, I just want to get an understanding of what you mean. When you refer to premises, are you referring to the structural aspects of the building?
Well, premises is a legal term.
Sure. I'm asking how you used it in
Okay.
this testimony.
This was the premises as the territorial law defines premises.
Okay. Well, since you used it, do you include the structural aspects of the building as you use premises in your
Essentially, the
testimony?
footprint of everything that uses electricity, yes.
The footprint of everything that uses electricity, okay. Well, I mean, the flooring, walls, and roofs, would you include that in your scope?
That's part of the premises, yes, and I obviously I discussed those later on.
Yep. And the electrical system you would include within the premises?
Yes,
The HVAC system,
yes,
mechanical and plumbing?
yes.
Fire sprinkler system, wastewater and stormwater systems, right?
Yes.
What about the equipment that is used in operation of the premises, such as pet food processing equipment?
I think you might be getting into more of a legal question there, so I don't know.
All right. What about additional buildings that were constructed and connected to this existing premises?
So, yes, there were, I've talked about the fact that the compressor building was added to the original premises back in 2002.
Okay. You're aware that there's been some testimony about the ventilation system using these in-floor ducts.
Mhm.
Okay, and those are just basically ducts through concrete flooring.
Yeah, that's all.
Okay. I think you've said that Purina retained the basic structure necessary for textile manufacturing, and you include these concrete tunnels.
Where is this?
Do you recall referring to these concrete tunnels in your testimony?
You'd have to
Okay.
point it out to me.
Direct, it's on page 25, 1 through 15.
Okay. 25. I have a photograph.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's actually on page 24. And you say on the second line there, they have retained the basic structure of the building.
Including parts of the structure that are critical to manufacturing, yes.
And you also, the next sentence says you refer to those concrete tunnels, right?
Yes, the concrete, massive concrete walls, reinforced roofing, and concrete tunnels,
Right. Those are the in-floor ventilation systems we just talked about.
yes.
Okay. You're aware that those were filled in with concrete?
No, actually, I saw the concrete tunnels when we visited the site on July 29th,
You're talking about the large concrete tunnels
that you could walk through, yeah.
that you could walk through,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, they were still there.
Those are fed by branch tunnels, though, right?
I don't know if they're fed by, but.
They are connected
They're
to-
connected, yes,
Branch tunnels that
Yeah.
go up to the concrete floor above.
right.
Okay. The branches that go to the concrete floor above were filled in with concrete.
I'm sorry, that's
Is that-
not in evidence.
I'm sorry, what?
I'm sorry, that's
I
not
thought-
in- that's not in evidence.
I thought Buddy Lawson testified that.
I think you just referred to something going up through the floor as being filled with concrete. I don't think it was, that is exactly what
Okay. I think that's what he said, but maybe we just have a dispute about that. Maybe I could ask the witness what he remembers that has been done to these concrete
Okay,
ducts.
my recollection that Mr. Lawson did say that it had been built at concrete.
That
So
is mine.
it is in evidence.
Okay.
So I would say,
I think there was a distinction, Your Honor, between the vertical versus the horizontal tunnel.
Okay.
That's the confusion.
Now that I
This is
can't-
my
I
objection.
I
can't
see.
say unequivocally.
The two sets of horizontal tunnels, you testified, the small horizontal tunnels were filled, actually, the
Okay.
Maybe he can help us. figure
Right.
this out.
Can you help us, tell us what, if anything, was filled in with concrete?
Well, what we were able to see at the time was that in the floor from above, you could see that the hole was filled in. Now, filled with, I mean, I know that those were long tunnels, so we weren't able to see how far that went.
Sure.
And so, I don't know, but yes, there was a cap on it at least.
You just couldn't testify whether or not it was filled in all the way vertically, all the way horizontally,
I couldn't.
except for the fact that you know that the large underground tunnels.
Yeah, we saw those and we were able to look in them and shine a light and that kind of thing, yeah.
Is it fair to say they could no longer ventilate the floor above in their present state
No, I believe Mr. Lawson said that's not true.
with some changes, right? Didn't he say that you'd have to make some changes to be able to do that?
Again, that's something that you'd have to ask him.
Okay. But as part of your testimony that it retained the basic structure of the building, and you cite the concrete tunnels.
Right, which we saw.
Okay. And you saw that at least the concrete tunnels at the floor level were covered and filled in.
Yeah, there was a cap on there, but we saw the tunnels from underneath, again, they asked us not to go inside them because it was for safety reasons, but you could tell that they went the length of the floor underneath the entire floor. And they were, 7 or 8 feet wide.
There were, as I think you noted, there were some buildings that were added by Nestle Purina. Does that refer to the 100,000 square foot building, proposed building for lines 3 and 4?
What we saw that had been added was the freezer building,
Right.
and I referenced that in my testimony, and
Mhm.
also the empty can storage building.
Right. And you saw the beginning of what appeared to be construction for lines 3 and 4, right?
when we were touring through the original premises, we saw through the doorway that there was structural steel going up and that kind of thing. So,
Okay.
yes, there was construction happening outside the original premises.
And those premises, clearly they were not present back when Spring held the plant, right?
Those premises?
Those structures, whatever we want to call
Right.
them.
No, and that, again, I referenced that in my testimony that those are new.
So they didn't perform any function back in 1999.
No, they're an expansion of the existing premises. So they were not there at the time.
Now, you say there was this freezer building added. Spring did not have a freezer, did it?
No, not that I'm aware of.
So that's a new functionality that has been added.
Yes, that expansion to the premises is new functionality.
Springs did not have any can handling function. did
Not
it?
that I'm aware of, no.
Now, you said there were some areas that were used for manufacturing that you observed on your July 29th site visit that was in operation. Did you say that?
I don't think I said they're in operation. I said
Okay.
that Nestle Purina is using that space that Springs Industries and Dundee Mills use for manufacturing, that Nestle Purina is using that for manufacturing as well. When I say using, the equipment is in there and is
Right.
energized. When we walked through there, it wasn't running at that moment. But again, we could see on the computer screens for the equipment that it was energized and in operation. Well, I'd say that it was energized and I assume that usable, I don't know, but, it's installed.
Were you aware of any testing that was going on with respect to that equipment?
I believe they mentioned that they were doing testing, yes.
Okay. So that might explain why they were energized.
Yes.
You would need to energize these
Yeah.
pieces of equipment to test them.
Yeah, they had already been installed and now they're going through testing apparently. Or they were at that time.
Now, we also heard some testimony about, and you, I think, talked about it, some drains that were added to the floors.
Yes, they, again, as we've talked about, that for about 15% of the flooring, that they noted that those were under the areas that, basically certain equipment that they put in, they took the flooring out, put in drains, and then
Yeah.
put the flooring back.
That is a functionality that was not present when Springs held the facility.
For that 15%, yes.
Now, did you measure the floor for its thickness?
No. I actually asked and they weren't able to tell me.
Okay. So you're not aware of whether or not it was a thicker floor for structural reasons?
I'm not, no.
Did you observe any, do you know whether or not structural rebar was installed in this new floor?
I've seen pictures and I've seen rebar in there, and I also don't know, I would assume that the old floor had that too, but I don't know that. I've seen pictures of the construction of that floor though, and I saw the rebar.
In your pictures, did you note that the floor, original floor, was removed down to the dirt?
Well, just to note that those were Nestle Purina's pictures.
Sure.
Yeah. Yes, there was dirt, yes.
I mean, most of your observations come from either the pictures you've seen or the two site visits you've had, both.
And talking to people that have been involved in the plant for years.
Sure,
yes.
but your physical observations of the premises, your building, structure, whatever?
Yes, yes.
Okay. You also cite an aerial photograph and note that limited changes were observable, if any. Didn't you?
There's few aerial photographs, yes,
Yeah.
in my testimony.
Those aerial photographs wouldn't show you the electrical changes.
No, no.
They wouldn't show you, I'm just going to list, mechanical, plumbing, HVAC, or flooring changes, would they?
No.
Now, you say that, at some point in your testimony, don't you say that the distribution plant was in full operation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I was told that it was filled to capacity and represented about 3 weeks worth of inventory.
Okay.
And we saw trucks going in and out. You can tell in the picture on the right, I think I counted up, there are about 50 trucks out there.
Were you ever told that that was for testing?
No, I was not told that.
Testing meaning, well, anyway, if you weren't told, you're not aware. So you don't know the full capacity of the distribution center, do you? Like, you don't know actually how much it could
No, that's
process?
why I asked, and I said, I'm just curious, how much inventory does that represent? And Representative thought for a minute and said, that's about 3 weeks worth.
And since you didn't see any food processing activity going on, was it clear to you that the material you saw or product you saw in the distribution center did not come from on site?
Right, it's a distribution warehouse, meaning
Sure.
that it comes in from one place and
Sure.
goes out to somewhere else.
By
Yeah.
definition.
Right.
You also said that the data center was operational, don't you?
Yes,
Okay.
I did observe that.
And you don't know the extent of the data center's operation.
What do you mean?
Is that, okay? You don't know whether or not the data center was being used at its full operating capacity at that time, do you?
It's hard to define a full operating capacity of a data center. So I don't, what I saw was a data center that was operational and the components were running and such, yes.
And would you know whether or not you'd need that, need the data center to be operational to test the processing center?
I would think so, but I also know that I'm sure you would need it for the offices that were in place as well.
Now, you say that the freezer was also in operation, right?
It was chilled,
It was chilled.
yes.
You also heard Mr. Lawson say that it was not, there was no freezing going on.
I think he was talking about the temperature of it, but it was certainly chilled. I couldn't tell you what temperature it was chilled to, but they told us that it was chilled so that they could make sure that it was working fine.
Yeah. And you didn't see any food being stored in the freezer.
No.
So when you say in operation, you just mean it was cooled.
I guess it depends on what your definition of an operation is. If you got a freezer and it's at freezing temperature, it seems like that's an operating freezer.
And that's what you meant.
Yes.
I'm going to talk to you a little bit about you testified a lot about whether or not the service received by Purina was permanent or temporary, right?
I testified. I have things in my testimony about that. Yes.
Yeah. And you also give a definition of permanent service, right?
Can you show me where you're talking about?
Just sitting here today, you don't remember providing a definition for permanent service?
Not off the top of my head. I'd like
Okay,
to
we'll
see
go
what
there.
you're referring to.
How would you define permanent service?
Well, our tariffs define it as service to a customer. Actually, our tariffs discuss temporary construction service, and I believe I talked about that in, one of my exhibits is the rules and regulations, where it discusses temporary construction service. Let me go to, this is the exhibit, rebuttal 1. So the rules and regulations.
Yeah, you don't have to sign a contract?
No, ma'am, no.
Has he not seen evidence to the contrary
To sign a contract for temporary service?
for permanent service?
For permanent service. No, ma'am, actually, in our PL rates, and in fact, most all of our rates, the customer does not have to sign a contract. As a matter of fact, the beginning of the rules and regulations discuss the fact that when they apply for service, and I'll go back to that,
Maybe I'm just
yeah, it says that,
messing you up.
No, that's where I was going pretty
okay,
soon.
okay. It discusses the fact that, that it serves as their contract. So most of our customers do not, the vast majority of our customers do not have to sign a contract, including the customers that are on the PL rates. We do have rates that the customers do have to sign a contract for, including real-time pricing, because those are things that the customer has to agree to a customer-specific component of that service, that
So
rate.
it just depends on the rate.
That's
They
right.
have to sign.
But again, for PL rates, there's
Okay.
no contract.
Okay, thank you.
And
So-
you mentioned one of those rates that you do have to sign a contract for,
RTP?
the RTP rate.
Yeah.
And that's the one that Purina specifically talked about in the initial conversations,
Said they had interest in, yes.
right?
Yeah.
And so you said for that one, you have to sign a contract.
Yes.
Okay. So when you were asked, and I was actually taking you to where you define permanent service, but you say,
I think there's just a confusion here, because the question that he was asked is, how is this service different from temporary construction service? And then he answers, comparing the two. I think the issue is he's not given a specific, like, tariff definition of temporary service, whereas temporary service is in the tariff. In other words, he didn't give a tariff definition of permanent service. Temporary service is in the tariff. In his rebuttal testimony on page 4, he's asked, how is this service different from temporary construction service, meaning the service to Nestle Purina? And he gives an answer, and that may be the testimony you're referring to. Sorry to interrupt, but the idea of the definition, I think, is confusing.
I see.
Thank you.
Well, let's look at your rebuttal testimony, page 4.
Okay.
Bottom of the page, you are answering the question Mr. Edwards here noted, and you say Georgia Power Service is permanent, and it is not temporary because, and then you list 3 items. And
That's right.
Question is, where do those 3 items come from? Is that from the tariff?
Trying to remember, I apologize. Again, this is contrasting to temporary service, and that's where I was going with the temporary, the definition of temporary service in the rules and regulations. So, and when I say temporary service, it's actually temporary construction service. And if you just give me a minute. Okay. So if you look on the rules and regulations, section C, then again, this is my rebuttal 1 exhibit, section C, number 9.
Okay.
And it discusses the foregoing extension, and it says, temporary service is defined as service where the company is only required to provide service drop and meter to construction jobs, fairs, carnivals, and fruit stands, Christmas tree stands, and similar locations and structures where service will be less than 12 months, and so on.
Okay. Did you have involvement in drafting that language?
No, that language has been there for a long time.
Okay. This section you just read, this section 9C, it begins with, in case the provision of temporary service involves, I'm sorry, back to 9, the beginning of 9. My fault.
Okay.
The foregoing extension and connection regulations do not apply to temporary service. And then you go on to define in this rate temporary service.
Right.
Is it fair that you're defining temporary service for purposes of determining whether or not the extension and connection regulations apply?
I would say that it's defining temporary service.
Okay.
So going back to it, in the case of Nestle Purina and the fact that they're running their operations, yes, they are constructing doing construction at the site, but when we toured the facility on July 29th, we were able to see operations going on, operations occurring.
Before customers take service under this P&L rate, do they have to sign a customer application?
No.
And just specifically in this case, are you aware of any customer application being signed by Purina?
Not signed. The customer applied for service is what we would count as applying for service via an email.
Just simply when they ask, please switch the account over to Nestle Purina's name?
Yes, and the thing is, if I call to Georgia Power and say I'd like service at my house, it's going to be the same thing. I've acknowledged the fact that I want service, and that is what we consider an application for service.
And under your terms, by doing that, because of the language in this tariff, this P&L tariff, you're considering that they've automatically signed up for permanent service.
The PL tariff also applies to temporary service, but the fact that they asked for permanent, or they asked to have the service change from Springs Industries account to their account, yes, is applying for service as we would define it.
And then here you've got this temporary service. You're calling it it's any service other than having to provide a service drop and a meter.
I don't think you said that right. I want you to repeat that.
Temporary service is defined as service where the company is only required to provide a service drop and a meter.
Yes, that's the definition in the rules and regs.
Okay. So does it matter?
And it goes on from there, but
Sure.
that's part of it.
Sure.
And keep in mind, and one of the things in my testimony is that I showed an example of temporary construction service. I showed a picture of it.
Sure.
Nestle Purina has construction trailers out back, and we in fact serve that with a single phase line with serving a pole mount transformer. Again, if you look at the picture there, you'll see that it comes down and that the conduit actually goes along the ground. That's what temporary construction service looks like. The service that Nestle Purina has been using is actually using the line that we installed back in 1991 for Dundee Mills.
Mm-hmm. Under the P&L rate.
That you're asking if Dundee Mills is on P&L rate or Nestle Purina? Nestle Purina is under P&L rate currently, yes.
Was Dundee Mills or Spring under the P&L rate?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. But anyway, you're referring to the rules and regs under the P&L rate for this discussion
The rules
about
and regs
temporary or permanent service.
No, the rules and regs apply to all the rates.
Okay. So is there the case that you could have temporary service with something more than just a meter drop and a service drop and a meter? Is that possible?
Well, again, this is a definition of temporary service in the rules and regs, and that's what it defines it as.
Yeah. Well, the regs, don't they note in 9C, then in case the provision of temporary service involves anything more than a meter installation and a service drop?
Then, yes, the applicant shall pay for all labor and material costs.
So it is possible to have temporary service that involves more than just a service drop and a meter?
Yes. But again, you wouldn't be running your operations off of it if it's temporary service,
Operations like construction?
like distribution warehouse.
Okay. So are you saying that there is no rate applied to Purina, the P&L rate? None of that power is going to serve construction activities?
No, I'm not saying that.
Okay.
So there's certainly, and I talked about that in my testimony, that they are doing some construction on the site, but the original premises is intact that we've been serving since 1990.
Mm-hmm. What you referred in your testimony, those were the construction trailers, right?
For the temporary service?
Right.
Yes.
But there's also construction that is being serviced not by the construction trailer service.
Yes, there is construction happening at the site, as you know, just like lots of customers could have construction going on. That doesn't mean that suddenly they have temporary service.
So in your definition of permanent or temporary service, it doesn't matter to you that the customer is maybe only doing construction work. The load is only going to construction. Would that matter to you?
It could be a factor, but it's not happening here.
Okay. Based on your position that this facility is in operation?
Based on my walking through the plant and, seeing the plant and taking pictures and seeing that that was a plant that was not just a construction site.
Now, remind me, you led the team that drafted the rules and regulations, right?
I lead the team that is responsible for the language in the rules and regulations. So again, a lot of these go back to, in fact, on this page, the original one was 1956. So I haven't been leading that long. But yes, I'm responsible for the team that is responsible for the language in these. So when we have a rate case like we do right now, then that's my team that works on the language. I'm going to look at some emails here. The first one is in your direct testimony and it's Exhibit 1. Okay. Yes.
Is this the email that you reference in which you're going to request service to be switched over?
Yes. We have a firm cutoff. Please change electrical service name over to us on this day per the following.
Okay. And then let's look at, now, this is one page of a longer email, is it not?
Not sure.
Okay, let's look at Walton Exhibit 67 in our exhibit notebook.
Okay, and I don't have that.
Should be over there.
Is it this it?
No.
No. There's been some rearranging.
Yeah.
I have some up here.
We've got a notebook for him. I thought I had it up there already.
And just for the record, I'd like to suggest that this is the total statement email, maybe a longer thread that was produced. But this is the text of the email.
It's a reply, though, and I was, so maybe that's what you're saying.
Thread, yeah, you're trying to get it full. I just wanted to be clear that it wasn't just part of it.
Okay. Be helpful if you found the tab. Yeah. Okay.
Dave, what
Okay,
exhibit are you
thank you.
looking at?
67.
67.
That's right, 67. Tell me when you've had a minute to look over these.
I haven't read it all. Is that what you?
Not the whole, really, I'll direct you to where I'm going. If you just generally, can you tell us if this is the full chain of that email that we just looked at?
I couldn't tell you that, no.
Okay. Tell me if the email in your direct testimony, Exhibit 1, is the same as the one on the 4th page of this exhibit.
Let's see. Count from the beginning. Is there are page numbers at the bottom of these, right? So you have a page number?
Yep, last three digits, 150.
Okay. So what you're asking me is what?
Okay? It's the email in your direct testimony, Exhibit 1, the same as the email on the 4th page of this Walton Exhibit 67.
Yes, it has some strange differences in formatting, but it looks to be the same.
Sure. Okay. Let's just start with the oldest email in this chain, which will be on the second to last page.
Okay.
In this email, Kathy Parker and Scott McLean are emailing, and it says, "Hi, Scott. At this time, there will not be any required paperwork." And that's consistent with, is that what it said, first of all?
Yes, yes.
And this is coming from Georgia Power, or Southern Company in this case.
It is. Now, that's strange because it seems to be answering a question and we don't have that question, but. So I would say this is not the entire chain.
Okay. Well, does Ms. Parker say at this time there's not any required paperwork?
That's what this email, that's the
Mhm.
wording of this email, yes.
Okay. And it says, once you begin to add your load in 2018, 2019, then we will offer the RTP rate and the MLM rate for the rest of your plants. That's consistent with your testimony before, right?
Consistent with what part of my testimony?
That you said that Purina was interested in switching over at some point to the RTP MLM rate.
They're interested in the rate. Yes,
Interested.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
There will be some paperwork at that time. Is that
Yes,
correct?
yes. And she's talking about, I assume that she's talking about the CBL contract, the RTP contract.
Okay. And then let's,
Although, I'll say that I don't know, not having the previous email, I couldn't say exactly what this whole conversation is about, but.
okay. Okay, if you would look to the 3rd page of this set, which is last 3 digits, 149,
Okay.
and there's an email from Shelby Ray Holsomback dated November 6, 2017, is that right?
Yes.
And does Ms. Holsomback say, I followed up with Kathy and a few other folks to be sure, make sure we were following the plan that they originally established for you starting Wednesday, November 8, 2017. You all will be on the standard power and light rate during construction. Is that?
Yes, yes.
So it's your understanding that at least Ms. Holsomback was indicating they would be on that rate just during construction?
No.
Then-
Objection to this, he inserted a word in the email from her. He inserted the word just, and he's not reading the full statement that she made.
Okay, if I've inserted just, I'll read it in full if that's fine. Okay. You all will be on the standard power and light rate during construction. I read that correctly, right?
Yes.
And then she goes on and says, once we receive all of your electrical load information, we will be able to run your real-time pricing rate and provide you with a cost analysis of what that rate would look like, and can also run the multiple load management analysis so you can compare the two and decide how you would like to move forward. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you did, and that's, the idea is that we can't, again, they had an interest in RTP from the very beginning, and MLM. We can't determine what their RTP rate is going to look like, because again, it's customer specific until we have all the loads. If they were able to give us the final loads on November 7th, the next day, we could have gone ahead and run that analysis and given them the RTP contracts. But, so that's what she's saying there.
Sure. She's also saying that the power and light rate will be used during construction.
She said the wording, you will be on the standard power and light rate during construction, yes.
Okay.
But that's not to say that they couldn't be on PL, I'm sorry, on RTP during, construction operations, all that.
There's a response to Ms. Holzenbeck, I think. Yeah, on the next email up above, from Scott McLean, dated November 6, 2017, is that correct?
The one just above it?
Yep.
Yes, I see it.
Okay. And then read whatever you want to, but does Mr. McLean indicate to you that indicate that my understanding is the PL tariff you suggest is probably our best option for the Hartwell facility during construction period in 2018? Did I read that correctly?
Yes, that's what his words say. And we can revisit in late 2018, early 2019, before the equipment load is added.
Okay. And then Mrs. Holzenbeck responds to that November 7, 2017, up above.
Yes.
And she confirms, you are correct. The PL is the best rate during construction, and we will see growth and have some load numbers in 2018, 2019. We'll begin discussion of the transition to RTP and MLM.
Right. In fact, she started in, I believe, early 2018, trying to get that final load information to be able to give that RTP offer. So again, if we had had those final loads, they could have gone on when they started operations in May of 2018.
Okay. No contract was ever signed.
Now, that's not to say that, by the way, that's not to say that anybody can be on PL for the entire life of their facility. So that's not to say that, I wouldn't want to characterize PL as a construction rate, because it's not. We have a large number of customers. We have about 100,000 customers that are on the PL rates. PL being PLS, PLM, PLL, it's a family of rates. So,
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, and no contract was ever signed for the RTP rate for Purina, right?
It was not. Ms. Holzenbeck kept asking and asking for the final load information, and she did not get that until February of this year. And then when she got that, then she was able to present Nestle Purina with RTP contracts to sign.
Okay. There was a new exhibit that I want to look at that we all got the other day from Purina, Exhibit 452.
She has copies there. Another set.
They worried about that. We'll get that. Ms. Warren needs to have it. I didn't realize that one. Gordon's done.
I'm sorry? I have this book. I don't know what's in it. This book? Okay.
So at some point, we'll get
Can you-
specification, yes, okay.
Do I need to have that where I can get to it?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Nick, can you?
Thank you.
Exhibit.
tell me when you've had a chance to look at the,
I see it, but again, I haven't read through all of it.
Okay, I'm focusing on the email in the middle of the second page from Ms. Shelby Ray Holstenbeck dated November 4, 2018. And, yeah.
Yes.
Well, okay, I think there was a correction later. So let me start with the email on the very first page. This is an email from Shelby Ray Holstenbeck dated December 11, 2018.
Which one, I'm sorry?
Very first email on this exhibit.
The first page,
Yep.
where underneath redacted?
That's right.
Okay.
That's an email from Shelby Ray Holstenbeck dated December 11, 2018.
Yes, it is.
Okay, and she has made some notes below, and is that your understanding that the information in red is from her, Ms. Holstenbeck?
Yes.
Okay. So one thing she says, well, do you get the sense that this is an email listing out the different accounts of Purina?
Let's see. I couldn't say that for sure. I mean, I can't look up the account numbers at this moment.
Sure. But at least Ms. Holstenbeck is responding to these as if they're the accounts of Purina. Is that right?
Where do you see her saying that?
Middle of the page, second page, Ms. Holstenbeck says, Danny, unfortunately, I do not know much more about these accounts than you do. The accounts were taken over from a customer and so forth. And then she says, see my notes below in red.
It says these accounts were taken over from the customer who was in the facility before you, and I believe the descriptions remain the same account since it was not otherwise named. See my notes below in red. So I think that so I would not say that she's saying that these are all Nestle Purina accounts, no. She's saying that, these, for instance, some of these are no longer active. It seems
Sure.
to me like she's saying that these are accounts that were there or somewhere beforehand. And again, without being able to look up account numbers and such, I couldn't tell you for sure
Sure.
what these represent.
Well, the very first account or item on the second page is 09222-01018.
Yes.
Again, you don't know if that's a particular account of Nestle Purina, as you're saying, right?
I believe that one, I would say that one is, yes.
Okay. And then the reference or the statement that Ms. Holstenbeck says about that account is, this should be the main billing account that is capturing most of your construction loads from the last remaining transformer. Right?
She says that. She doesn't say that construction load is the only thing on that account, but she says it's capturing construction load.
Construction loads,
Yes.
okay. Have you seen this email before?
Yes, I briefly saw it.
Other than on the stand here today?
No, I mean, I saw it briefly. I didn't study it, but yeah, I did see it
Okay.
within the last few days.
If that's the case, well, let me ask you this. For the last exhibit we looked at, Walton Exhibit 67, had you seen these emails before?
Yes, I saw them when I was reviewing Walton's testimony. That was their exhibit. Can you remind me which exhibit that was in? Was it Mr. DiMartino or? But it was in somebody's. It was an exhibit in somebody's testimony, right?
Okay.
Yes, I did see that.
I would go ahead and I'd like to move to enter into as an exhibit NPPC 452, since the witness is familiar with this and says he's seen it before in their files.
Any objection?
This is what we just, I do have an objection to relevance on this.
I can't.
I object to relevance here, in particular, the statute defines services including all forms of service.
Couple of things. Can we move those
Oh, sorry.
anytime soon? I mean, I don't know if you need them.
We object to the relevance.
I
of
can never
this.
tell who's talking.
At this point, Your Honor, statute defines services including all forms of service. And so the distinctions about whether somebody's using something for construction or not just aren't relevant to the question before the commission.
That's overruled.
One more. Let's look at Purina Exhibit 453.
Do you know what tab that is? In here? Oh, I see. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. You recognize this email?
Yes.
Is
Well, it's a, yes, I'm sorry, yeah, the email.
It's from Shelby Ray Holsenbach, who is, again, with Georgia Power
Yes.
Southern Company.
Yeah,
And she is sending this email to, can you tell if it's sent to someone at Purina?
Danny Dawes, Hartwell, MPPC.
Yep.
So yeah, I believe that's free, yeah.
And in this, she is providing, is it true that there is a PowerPoint here that is called, or lists, permanent service options?
That's what it's labeled. She's not making a distinction between permanent and temporary. I think she's just referring to the idea of the final configuration, different options for the final configuration for Nestle Purina's service.
You're testifying about what she meant by this?
That's what I'm observing by looking at this, yes.
Do you have a question?
I'm flicking through here. No, I'm done with this, actually, this exhibit. Oh, yeah. I would like to tender this into evidence. This is NPPC 453 for the same reason as before. At some point, Georgia Power put a metering cabinet on the site.
Yes, in fact, I have a picture of it in my rebuttal
Sure.
testimony, yes.
And your testimony is generally that shows permanent service.
I was saying that that's not the style of service that we would have installed if it was temporary, yes.
Okay. That metering package would ultimately have to be, it was not going to be used had Georgia Power installed the substation it proposed to install.
I believe was going to be used. I think that was the
And-
idea, yes.
It would be used in conjunction with the substation on site?
My understanding is the substation was going to be built, we were looking at building a substation exactly where Walton EMC put it, so the substation wasn't, your definition of on-site, but substation was nearby, but yes, the service would have gone through that metering cabinet.
You wouldn't have had a metering cabinet or a metering device at the substation?
The way it was configured, the way we configured it was to go through that metering cabinet that was installed that is in the picture in my testimony.
Were you you never had any discussions with Purina as to the reason they needed that metering package there?
I did not know.
Did you know that soon, well, do you know if soon after the meeting package was installed, testing began?
Testing
Testing of the processing center?
I don't know when testing began, though.
Just almost finished here. Can we look at Walton Exhibit 33, please? It's the
That's in the white notebook?
It is.
Doesn't seem to have printed correct.
May I walk over here and
Yeah.
take a look? Oh, yeah, that's how it came
Okay.
You said 33.
33.
So, yeah, there's letters missing in this email, but, you know.
So, have you seen this email before?
This was part of Walton's exhibit in their testimony that they filed in their testimony. Is that correct?
I believe it was.
So I read through their exhibit, so if it was,
Yeah.
if it was from that, then yes.
But you didn't observe this contemporaneously when these emails were sent?
Which email are you discussing?
Specifically, any one of these that involves or includes Georgia Power personnel, such as the second from the top.
Yes, I've seen that.
Okay.
I say, let me back up, because these first two are actually emails from and to people at
Right.
Nestle Purina, so, but yes, yeah. So is there an email a particular email that you want me to look at?
Yeah, we're going to, yeah.
Okay.
I'm hurrying. Yeah, if, turn to Bates number 182.
Okay. Let's see. Okay.
And is it your understanding that these are responses from Mrs. Holsomback with Georgia Power to Purina personnel?
Yes, from
Okay.
February of this year, yes.
Okay. And she's providing some information in response to Mr. Montgomery's questions, inquiries.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And one of the first items she says is she provides is an itemized list of currently installed capital costs, right?
Yes.
Second item is verify that the existing industrial park power feed can provide Purina with the additional power beyond the contracted 8 megawatt to 9.9 megawatt as a short-term solution, short-term less than 12-month solution till a new 115 kV substation located on Purina property comes online. Is that the request?
That's correct.
Okay. And then Mrs. Holsomback responds, as long as new load moves into the industrial park to be served off the existing feeder, we will be able to accommodate the 9.9 megawatt. As a short-term solution, as the substation construction is completed, neither the 8 megawatt or the 9.9 megawatt will be contracted specifically to Nestle Purina. Did I read that correctly?
You read that correctly. Yes, is there,
Okay.
I mean, I know different information from talking to Ms. Olsenbach that she,
Well, actually,
Okay.
since she's not testifying,
okay.
may I object to that?
Well, from business records too, but go ahead.
I think that is it, Chris.
Can I say, that, really what she's saying is that until they contract. So they were not under contract at that time. She kept asking Nestle Purina for a long time to give final load information so that she could do the RTP offer. They finally gave that in February, but she was saying until they had a signed contract for that RTP, then if somebody else moved in and needed that load, then she couldn't guarantee that load. Now, that all said, that's not to say that, to say that isn't going to be contracted specifically to Nestle Purina is not saying we're not going to be able to serve you. There hasn't been a customer that we have that we couldn't serve. We were able to serve our customers with their needs.
And this is information you gained from your conversations with Ms. Holzenbach.
Well, and looking at the business records and talking to other people, just in general, like I said, there has not been a customer that has come along that we said, oh, I'm sorry, we can't serve you with your needs.
That's all for my cross.
Okay.
Chris, you're not involved.
Here, I just have
Excuse
a,
me, what are you saying?
I just wanted to inquire why he was also going to cross-examine Mr. Dyke.
since they're talking about whether my client has accepted the service, and whether it's permanent or construction service, I have about 5 or 6 questions like that.
No, I don't think we should have witnesses worked over, questioned by, multiple attorneys on the same subject matter, Your Honor.
I agree with you, Ms. Evans, but I do think if it's very minimal.
Yes, Your
and,
Honor.
I mean, he has been stipulated in the agreement, and, but do keep it
Yes,
short,
very
because this is really,
You get it.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, Your Honor. With respect to the trailers you referred to that are on site, you don't know whether those are being used for construction activities, correct?
Don't know exactly what they're being used, specifically inside now,
Okay,
under their temporary trailers.
right. You don't know if they're being used for construction activities or other activities, correct?
No, I don't know that for sure.
And you referred to full operations in May of 2018,
For the distribution center.
so you're not referring to anything relating to the manufacturing facility?
No, not in that situation, but I was saying that I don't know if I said full operations, but I said permanent operations, meaning operations that will be continuing. So operations that are long-term operations going on inside the building is what I was referring to.
And that's simply based on your visit on July 29th?
That and some of the, for instance, there's a press release that I had in my exhibit where they talk about this is the beginning of our operations and things like that.
But you weren't present for that
For that press release?
ribbon cutting, were you?
No, I just read it in the press release.
Yeah, and you're not privy to-
Issued by Nestle Purina.
Correct, and you're not privy to what operations are actually being run out of the distribution center? And what
Just from my observations and talking to the Nestle representative when we were going through and her telling me that, again, that the warehouse was capacity and that it represented about 3 weeks' worth of inventory.
And Ms. Miller would be best suited to answer questions about how that distribution center was operating, but she's the one that you talked to, correct?
Yeah, she's the representative that told me that.
Okay, thank you.
Regret?
Mr. Dyke, I'd like to go back to this question about contracts. And I believe you testified that one does not have to execute a written contract with Georgia Power Company to take service from it, right?
That's correct.
Where do you go to find the rights and obligations of Georgia Power Company and the customer in the absence of an executed written contract?
The rules and regulations that we were looking at earlier.
And are the rules and regulations the only thing that matter?
Well, and tariffs.
And the tariffs?
Yeah.
And the tariffs incorporate the rules and regulations,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
And you'd also go to law, wouldn't you?
I'm sorry?
I mean, we do have the Territorial Electric Services,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So Georgia Power Company ends up with a service obligation
Right.
and rights and obligations with respect to a customer because of the customer taking service under those rates, rules, and service obligations, right?
Yes.
Now, do customers who've taken the power and light rate, after a period of time, for whatever reason, decide they'd like to migrate to real-time pricing? Does that happen?
Yes.
You have to
definitely.
answer, yes.
Yes, definitely.
I mean, does it happen frequently or infrequently?
Well, we have over 2,000 customers on RTP, so it's, you know, it's happened, I would say, frequently, if you define that as frequently.
So, Mr. Dyke, the RTP rate does expressly require a contract?
Yes, because it has a customer-specific component in the CBL agreement.
Yes. So, I appreciate that you're not, you were asked questions about a email sequence with Ryan and Shelby Holsomback, correct?
Yes,
And Shelby was answering questions?
yes,
She didn't have the privilege of a lawyer to object to
Right.
questions, right?
right,
No. So after the installs and removals at the site, the $113,000 of installation that Georgia Power has made at the site, and the removals of $17,000 at the site, the person asking the question say, verify that the existing power feed can provide Purina with the additional power beyond the contracted 8 megawatts to 9.9 megawatts. Aren't we in agreement that Nestle Purina and Georgia Power Company never entered into a written, executed contract of that nature? Correct?
yes. That's-
And are you aware of Nestle Purina at any time contracting to take 8 megawatts of power from Georgia Power Company?
No,
So the person here is assuming something that is yet to come about?
yes,
He's assuming they're going to have a contract?
I would
Yes.
object to that testimony. He has no idea what the Nestle Purina representative is assuming.
Well, let me rephrase that then. May I please rephrase my question? The contracted 8 megawatts power either doesn't exist as a contracted 8 megawatts, or it is yet to come into existence.
yes.
Okay. So, thank you. You asked a question, follow-up question. You said that you didn't know Georgia Power Company ever being able not to serve a customer. And is that from just talking to people, or do you know from your experience at Georgia Power Company?
Well, I know from my experience that I've never seen a case where we were not able to
Okay.
serve a customer.
Okay. Now, I'd like to go to the email exhibit that discusses Nestle Purina Exhibit 452.
You mean
And this is the different accounts that people are discussing. And on page 2 of that exhibit, it is where Ms. Holsomback is responding in red on the color versions of it, if you have it.
Yes, I do.
And I want you to notice a term here. It says the last remaining transformer. Okay?
Yes,
When you look at that, I'm going to get our pictures up so we can explain this for a moment here.
okay.
For some reason, they've all been removed. Before now. Last remaining transformers have been removed. That statement seems to imply, does not, that there have been some transformers removed, correct?
Yes,
And is that correct, that some of Georgia Power Company's transformers have been removed?
Yes,
You have business records reflecting
yes,
the removal and the process of the removal of transformers?
yes,
And in fact, in your direct testimony, you sponsored an exhibit trying to show exactly how service is configured and how it's changed, right?
yes, that's correct.
You also have business records showing the instructions about the removals of the transformers, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to ask you, if one of those business records is, this is the second, what Georgia Power Company has marked as Exhibit 78.
I believe I have that here.
Yes.
Yes, I have it.
And I think you have our book with Exhibit 78?
Yes, me.
Okay.
yes.
And you notice on the first page of it that it's an email from Prudence Ryan
At Nestle Purina, yes.
and Nestle Purina, dated May 10, 2018. It's at 7:30 in the evening to Ms. Holsomback, correct?
Yes.
And you'll notice at the top of the second page, it refers to the HRT East Site Electrical Removal Scope.
Yes.
And if you go down to pad-mounted transformer 5460,
Yes.
do you see here the instruction under this contract for the removal
Yes. You want me to read it?
of
or-
other transformers? Yes, if you please read that.
Okay. And again, this is from Nestle Purina to Ms. Olsenbach. Under this contract, GP will make no changes to pad-mounted transformer number 5460. This transformer currently serves a substation, S1, in parentheses, inside the building, centrally located inside the Link building. This substation currently serves the distribution warehouse and Link buildings and is critical to the newly started operations.
And the reference to newly started operations is on May 10, 2018, correct?
That's correct. That's when the email was.
Absolutely. Now, in your direct, there was some questioning about a suggestion during a question that there was something just called testing going on when you were in the warehouse, the distribution center. And there was even suggestion that the announcement of its opening back in May of 2018 was sort of a Potemkin village. It was just people showing up and smiling and the like. Did business records indicate that that facility had been used, had stuff in it and was being used for storage at about that time?
Yes, business records that we have show that some Georgia Power representatives toured the building at that time and saw the operations, saw the product in the warehouse and operations going on.
And also, when you toured it in July
Of this year, yes.
of this year, in your direct testimony, did you not include some photographs on pages 15 and 16
I do.
and 17 of your testimony?
I do.
Would you open to those photographs?
Yes.
Now, there may be art to photography, so something that's small can be made to be look big. Do those photos fairly represent what you saw in that warehouse?
Yes. Definitely.
And in your testimony, you also mentioned the fact that they have a lot of equipment operating in the warehouse, shown on photo 12 and 13, correct?
Yes, the electric forklifts?
Yes.
Yes.
And in fact, you see on photo 8, on page 15, a forklift in operation, correct?
That's correct.
And weren't we instructed to walk so that we stayed away from the forklift operations when we were there?
We did. You can see the yellow barrier there.
Did any Nestle Purina representative say this is all just pretend?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dyke. And be excused.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We'd like to, at this point, move into 78.
No objection.
Why don't we take a 2-minute break and, what do you think?
Oh, 78.
Separate from the binder he has?
I don't have it. I've got the file.
That's what I had in my hands. Here it is, here it is.